Hello everyone, and welcome to today's profound exploration of the Contemplation Sutra, known in Sanskrit as the Amitayurdhyana Sutra, the second jewel in the trilogy of Pure Land scriptures. Today we'll journey together into the extraordinary world of visualization meditation and discover how the simple act of contemplating can transform our minds and lead us to genuine peace. The Contemplation Sutra tells us the remarkable story of Queen Vaidehi, who in her darkest hour of despair and imprisonment received from the Buddha himself a series of contemplations that could transport her beyond suffering to a realm of infinite beauty and peace. This isn't merely an ancient meditation manual, but a living guide that shows us how to use the power of our own minds to create inner sanctuaries of peace, even when external circumstances seem overwhelming. What makes this sutra especially relevant for our modern lives is its recognition that we don't need to wait for perfect external conditions to experience profound peace and joy. Through the practice of contemplation, we can access states of consciousness that transcend our immediate circumstances and connect us with sources of beauty, wisdom, and compassion that are always available within us. The sutra begins with a story that might feel surprisingly contemporary. Queen Vaidehi found herself trapped in an impossible situation. Her son, Prince Ajatashatru, had been manipulated by the evil advisor Devadatta into imprisoning his own parents and usurping the throne. The queen, confined to her chambers and facing the very real possibility of death, felt overwhelmed by grief, anger, and despair. When we read this literally, we see a historical account of palace intrigue and family betrayal that led to one woman's spiritual crisis and ultimate transformation. Queen Vaidehi represents anyone who has found themselves trapped by circumstances beyond their control, surrounded by betrayal and facing an uncertain future. But this story can be interpreted on much deeper levels. Queen Vaidehi represents the human condition itself, trapped in the prison of our own limitations, betrayed by our own desires and attachments, facing the inevitable suffering that comes with existence in an imperfect world. Her son's betrayal symbolizes how even our closest relationships can become sources of pain. Her imprisonment represents how we often feel trapped by our circumstances, unable to see a way forward. The existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote about the human condition as being thrown into existence without choosing our circumstances, forced to create meaning in situations we never asked for. Queen Vaidehi's situation perfectly embodies this existential predicament. Similarly, Albert Camus wrote about the absurd condition of human existence, caught between our need for meaning and a universe that often seems indifferent to our suffering. Carl Jung recognized that our greatest psychological crises often become the doorways to our most profound transformations. He called this process the dark night of the soul, where apparent defeat becomes the catalyst for spiritual breakthrough. Queen Vaidehi's imprisonment becomes the very condition that leads to her enlightenment. For those of you who feel trapped by difficult circumstances today, Queen Vaidehi's story offers profound hope. Maybe you're dealing with family conflicts, feeling betrayed by people you trusted, or simply overwhelmed by situations that seem beyond your control. Her story reminds us that even the most painful circumstances can become opportunities for spiritual growth and transformation. You don't have to wait for your external situation to improve before you can find peace. The very difficulties you're facing might be preparing you for breakthrough you couldn't imagine. In her desperation, Queen Vaidehi called out to the Buddha, even though he was far away. Miraculously, Buddha appeared before her, accompanied by his disciples Ananda and Madhyayana. This represents one of the most beautiful principles in spiritual life. The sincere calls for help are always answered, though not always in the ways we expect. The literal meaning shows us that Buddha had supernatural powers that allowed him to appear instantly wherever suffering beings called upon him with sincere hearts. This miraculous appearance wasn't just a display of power, but an expression of infinite compassion that transcends all limitations of space and time. This event can be understood as representing the principle that help is always available when we genuinely reach out for it. Sometimes this help comes through other people, sometimes through sudden insights or changes in perspective, and sometimes through inner resources we didn't know we possessed. The key is the sincerity of our calling, the genuine recognition that we need help beyond our own limited capacity. The philosopher Martin Buber wrote about what he called I-thou relationships, where genuine encounter between beings creates the possibility for transformation and revelation. Queen Vaidehi's calling out to Buddha and his response represents this kind of sacred encounter, where authentic need meets authentic compassion. Carl Rogers, the founder of person-centered therapy, discovered that healing happens most powerfully when clients feel genuinely heard and accepted by their therapists. This therapeutic relationship mirrors the spiritual principle illustrated by Buddha's response to Queen Vaidehi's call. When we feel truly seen and accepted in our suffering, transformation becomes possible. Modern neuroscience has shown that social connection and feeling heard activates the same neural pathways associated with physical healing and stress recovery. The simple act of being genuinely witnessed in our pain has measurable effects on our physiology and psychological well-being. When you're going through difficult times, remember that your sincere calls for help, whether directed to Buddha, God, the universe, or simply to the better angels of human nature, are never made in vain. Sometimes the help comes through unexpected people entering your life, sometimes through books or teachings that speak directly to your situation, and sometimes through inner strength and wisdom that emerges from your own depths. Trust that when you genuinely ask for help with an open heart, help will come, though it may not always look like what you expected. Buddha's first response to Queen Vaidehi's situation was to teach her meditation practices for purifying negative karma. He showed her how past actions create present circumstances, but more importantly, how present mindfulness and wholesome intentions can transform both our current experience and our future conditions. Literally, these teachings address the Queen's immediate psychological needs. She was tormented not only by her external circumstances, but by guilt, anger, and fear about what might happen next. Buddha taught her specific contemplation practices to purify these negative mental states and replace them with peace and clarity. These karma purification practices can be understood as early forms of what we now call cognitive behavioral therapy. By changing our mental habits and patterns of thinking, we can transform our emotional responses and create more positive outcomes. The practices Buddha taught work directly with the mind's tendency to create suffering through unhelpful thought patterns. The psychologist Aaron Beck, founder of cognitive therapy, discovered that changing thought patterns can dramatically improve emotional well-being and life outcomes. His work validates the ancient Buddhist understanding that our suffering often comes more from our mental responses to events than from the events themselves. Mindfulness-based interventions, now widely used in modern psychotherapy, are directly descended from the contemplative practices Buddha taught. Research by Jon Kabat-Zinn and others has shown that regular mindfulness practice can reduce anxiety, depression, and even physical pain while increasing overall life satisfaction. The concept of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections throughout life, provides scientific backing for the transformation Buddha promised through contemplative practice. Our brains literally rewire themselves based on our mental habits and practices. If you're carrying guilt about past actions or anxiety about future possibilities, these teachings offer a practical path forward. You can't change what's already happened, but you can change how it affects your present experience. Through gentle self-awareness and the cultivation of wholesome mental states, you can literally rewire your brain for greater peace and happiness. Start small, perhaps with just a few minutes each day of observing your thoughts without judgment, and gradually build your capacity for mental clarity and emotional stability. After teaching these preliminary practices, Buddha began the heart of the Contemplation Sutra, the 16 contemplations that would allow Queen Vaidehi to visualize the Pure Land in perfect detail. The first contemplation focuses on the setting sun, teaching her to visualize it with such clarity that she could see it whether her eyes were open or closed. The literal instruction is remarkably specific. Queen Vaidehi was to sit facing west, contemplate the setting sun until she could visualize it perfectly, seeing it clearly even when her eyes were closed. This wasn't just imagination, but a precise meditation technique designed to develop concentrated attention and inner clarity. This sun contemplation can be interpreted as representing the cultivation of inner light and wisdom. The sun symbolizes the illuminating power of consciousness itself, our innate capacity to bring clarity and warmth to any situation. By learning to visualize the sun perfectly, we develop the mental stability and clarity needed for deeper spiritual insights. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the sun as a symbol of consciousness and the self, representing the central organizing principle of the psyche. In his understanding, contemplating solar imagery helps activate our highest psychological potentials. Similarly, many mystical traditions use light meditation to develop spiritual insight and inner peace. Modern neuroscience research on visualization shows that mental imagery activates many of the same brain regions as actual visual perception. Athletes use visualization to improve performance, and medical patients use guided imagery to support healing. These findings validate the power of the contemplative practices taught in this sutra. Cognitive psychology recognizes visualization as a powerful tool for changing behavior and emotional states. When we repeatedly visualize positive outcomes or peaceful states, we're literally training our brains to recognize and create these conditions in actual experience. The practice of sun contemplation offers you a simple but powerful tool for developing inner stability and peace. Even if you can only spend a few minutes watching an actual sunset or visualizing one clearly, you're training your mind to access states of beauty and tranquility that exist independent of your external circumstances. This inner light, once cultivated, becomes a reliable source of guidance and comfort that you can access whenever you need it. The second contemplation builds on the first, teaching Queen Vaidehi to visualize water of perfect clarity and beauty. This water is not ordinary water, but represents the pure, transparent quality of enlightened consciousness, completely free from the turbidity of confusion and negative emotions. Literally, this contemplation involves visualizing water so clear and beautiful that it surpasses anything found in the ordinary world. This water reflects the light of the setting sun, creating a scene of breathtaking beauty that begins to approximate the conditions found in the Pure Land itself. Water symbolism appears in virtually every spiritual tradition, representing purification, life, and the flowing nature of consciousness itself. In this contemplation, the perfect clarity of the water represents the mind's natural state, when freed from the cloudiness of anger, greed, and delusion. The philosopher Thales identified water as the fundamental principle underlying all existence, recognizing its essential role in life and its capacity to take any shape while maintaining its essential nature. Similarly, the water contemplation teaches us about the fluid, adaptable nature of consciousness, when it's not frozen into rigid patterns of thinking and reacting. Modern psychology recognizes the therapeutic value of water imagery. Hospitals often include fountains or aquariums because the sound and sight of flowing water naturally calms the nervous system and reduces stress. Research shows that even visualizing peaceful water scenes can lower blood pressure and reduce anxiety. Environmental psychology has documented the restorative effects of what researchers call blue spaces, natural water environments that promote psychological well-being and stress recovery. The water contemplation taps into these same natural healing responses through the power of visualization. When your mind feels turbulent or unclear, the water contemplation offers a path to inner clarity and peace. By regularly visualizing perfectly clear, beautiful water, you're training your consciousness to recognize and rest in its own naturally pure state. This practice can help wash away mental confusion and emotional turbulence, leaving you feeling refreshed and clear, like emerging from a perfect, cleansing bath. The third contemplation introduces the ground or foundation of the Pure Land, described as being made of various precious materials including gold, silver, and crystal, all perfectly arranged in beautiful patterns that create a foundation of unshakable beauty and stability. The literal description presents a ground unlike anything in our ordinary experience, made of the most precious and beautiful materials imaginable, arranged in perfect harmony. This ground provides the stable foundation upon which all the other beautiful features of the Pure Land rest. This contemplation can be understood as representing the establishment of a stable foundation for spiritual life. Just as a beautiful building requires a solid foundation, spiritual development requires establishing reliable inner stability that can support all our other growth and achievements. Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows how higher human potentials can only emerge when fundamental needs for safety and security are met. The precious ground contemplation works with this same principle, helping establish inner security that allows spiritual development to flourish. Architect Christopher Alexander wrote about the importance of strong centers in creating beautiful, harmonious spaces. The precious ground contemplation helps establish our own consciousness as a strong center, a reliable foundation from which we can engage with life from a place of stability rather than reactivity. Modern trauma therapy recognizes the importance of establishing safety and stability before attempting to process difficult experiences. The precious ground contemplation serves a similar function, creating an inner sanctuary of beauty and stability that can support us through life's challenges. In your daily life, this contemplation offers a way to establish unshakable inner stability. When external circumstances feel uncertain or threatening, you can return in meditation to this foundation of precious beauty that represents your own inherent worth and the reliable support that's always available within consciousness itself. No matter what's happening around you, this foundation of inner beauty and stability remains constant and accessible. The fourth contemplation expands the scene to include beautiful trees made of precious gems, their branches, leaves, and fruits all composed of different jewels that create a forest of unimaginable beauty and perfection. Literally, these are not ordinary trees, but spiritual manifestations, made of various precious stones, each tree perfectly beautiful and contributing to an overall forest that surpasses any earthly paradise. The trees provide shade, beauty, and a sense of natural abundance that delights all who see them. Trees in spiritual symbolism often represent growth, life, and the connection between earth and heaven. These jeweled trees represent the transformation of natural growth processes when they occur in perfect spiritual conditions, free from disease, decay, or any kind of imperfection. Carl Jung wrote about the tree as a symbol of the self and individuation, representing the natural unfolding of human potential when it occurs in supportive conditions. The jeweled trees represent what human development looks like when it's supported by perfect spiritual conditions. Environmental psychology has extensively documented the healing effects of time spent in natural settings, particularly forests. Forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, developed in Japan, has been shown to reduce stress hormones, boost immune function, and improve overall well-being. The jeweled tree contemplation activates these same healing responses through visualization. Biophilia, the term coined by biologist E.O. Wilson, describes humans' innate affinity for natural environments and living systems. The jeweled tree contemplation connects us with this deep biological need for connection with nature, but in an idealized form that's always accessible through inner contemplation. When you feel depleted or disconnected from your natural vitality, the jeweled tree contemplation can help restore your sense of abundance and growth potential. By visualizing yourself surrounded by these perfect trees, you're connecting with the life force that's always available within you, ready to support your growth and development in beautiful ways. The fifth contemplation introduces the pure water that flows throughout the Pure Land, neither too hot nor too cold, flowing in beautiful streams that create the most pleasant and soothing sounds as they move through the landscape. The literal description presents water that's perfectly regulated for comfort and beauty, flowing in streams that enhance rather than disturb the peaceful atmosphere of the Pure Land. This water nourishes all the vegetation and creates a soundscape of perfect tranquility. Water flow represents the natural movement of life energy when it's not blocked by resistance or misdirected by craving. These perfect streams represent consciousness flowing freely and harmoniously, without the turbulence that comes from internal conflict or external pressure. The Taoist concept of wu-wei, or effortless action, resembles the quality of these perfect streams. When we learn to move with life rather than against it, our actions become as natural and beautiful as flowing water, accomplishing their purposes without struggle or strain. Hydrotherapy and the therapeutic use of water have been recognized across cultures for their healing properties. The sound of flowing water naturally calms the nervous system and helps induce states of relaxation and meditation. The perfect streams contemplation provides these benefits through visualization. Modern research on natural soundscapes shows that the sound of flowing water helps restore mental clarity and emotional balance after periods of stress or overstimulation. These natural sounds help reset our nervous systems to more optimal states of functioning. When your life feels turbulent or stagnant, the contemplation of perfect flowing water can help restore natural rhythm and ease to your experience. By visualizing the gentle, constant flow of these ideal streams, you can reconnect with your own natural capacity for smooth, effortless movement through life's challenges and opportunities. The sixth contemplation reveals the pavilions and buildings of the Pure Land, constructed entirely from precious materials and designed with perfect proportions that create an environment of complete harmony and beauty. Literally, these structures represent architecture beyond anything possible in our world, built from materials like crystal, gold, and precious gems, designed with perfect aesthetic proportions that please the eye and calm the mind. Every detail contributes to an overall sense of harmony and peace. Architecture has always reflected spiritual and psychological principles. These perfect buildings represent what happens when human creativity is guided by wisdom and compassion, rather than ego and competition. They show us the kind of beauty that emerges when function and aesthetics are perfectly united. The ancient Greek concept of the golden ratio and sacred geometry reflects humanity's recognition that certain proportions naturally create feelings of harmony and beauty. The pavilions of the Pure Land embody these perfect proportions on every level. Environmental psychology shows how architectural environments profoundly affect mood, thinking, and behavior. Spaces designed with proper proportions, natural materials, and beautiful details promote psychological well-being and social harmony. The Pure Land pavilions represent the perfection of these design principles. Christopher Alexander's pattern language identified specific architectural patterns that create life-enhancing environments. The Pure Land buildings embody all these positive patterns while eliminating any features that might create stress or discomfort. In your own living and working spaces, you can apply insights from this contemplation by creating environments that support peace and beauty. Even small changes like adding natural materials, improving proportions, or eliminating clutter can help your immediate environment better reflect the harmony described in this contemplation. The seventh contemplation focuses on the lotus throne of Amitabha Buddha, described as being made of countless precious materials arranged in perfect patterns, radiating light and beauty that surpasses all ordinary experience. The literal description presents a throne of unimaginable beauty and spiritual power, made from materials so precious and arranged so perfectly that they naturally emanate light and inspire devotion. This throne represents the perfect foundation for enlightened consciousness. The lotus throne symbolizes the achievement of perfect spiritual development that rises from but transcends ordinary conditions. Just as a lotus flower grows from mud but emerges completely pure and beautiful, enlightened consciousness develops within ordinary experience but transcends all limitation. Carl Jung wrote about the mandala as a symbol of the self and psychological wholeness. The lotus throne functions as a three-dimensional mandala, representing the perfect organization of consciousness around its enlightened center. Sacred geometry traditions recognize that certain forms and proportions naturally induce states of reverence and spiritual openness. The lotus throne embodies these principles in their most perfect expression, creating a visual support for meditation and contemplation. Research on meditation and contemplative practices shows that having visual focal points, especially those incorporating beautiful geometric patterns, can significantly deepen meditative states and promote psychological integration. When you feel scattered or unfocused in your spiritual practice, visualizing the perfect beauty and stability of the lotus throne can help collect and center your attention. This image represents your own potential for achieving perfect inner organization and spiritual authority. The eighth contemplation reveals the complete form of Amitabha Buddha himself, sitting upon the lotus throne with perfect physical characteristics that radiate infinite light and compassion to all beings throughout the universe. Literally, this contemplation teaches how to visualize Amitabha Buddha in complete detail, from his perfect physical proportions to the infinite light that emanates from his body, reaching all beings everywhere with compassionate blessings and support. The perfect form of Amitabha represents the complete integration of wisdom and compassion in human consciousness. Every detail of his appearance reflects inner qualities of peace, strength, and loving kindness developed to their ultimate perfection. Jung's concept of the wise old man archetype helps us understand how the figure of Amitabha functions psychologically. This image represents our own potential for wisdom and compassion when fully developed, serving as an inner guide and source of strength. Visualization practices using idealized human figures have been found to promote positive self-regard and emotional healing. When we contemplate perfect expressions of human potential, we activate our own capacity to embody these same qualities. Neuroscience research on mirror neurons shows that contemplating images of peaceful, compassionate beings actually activates the neural networks associated with these states in our own brains, literally helping us develop these capacities within ourselves. By regularly contemplating the perfect form of Amitabha Buddha, you're not worshiping an external deity, but cultivating your own potential for unlimited compassion and wisdom. This practice helps you recognize and develop the enlightened qualities that already exist within your own consciousness. The ninth contemplation extends to include Avalokiteshvara and Mahastama Prapta, the two great bodhisattvas who accompany Amitabha Buddha, representing perfect compassion and wisdom working together in harmony. Literally, this contemplation teaches visualization of three enlightened beings working together in perfect coordination, each contributing their unique qualities to the complete expression of enlightened activity in the Pure Land. Avalokiteshvara represents the perfection of compassion, the ability to respond to suffering with skillful and effective help. Mahastamaprapta represents the perfection of wisdom, the clear understanding that guides compassionate action. Together with Amitabha, they represent the complete integration of all enlightened qualities. The psychological principle of integration suggests that optimal human functioning requires balancing different capacities rather than overdeveloping some at the expense of others. The three Buddha contemplation represents perfect psychological integration. Systems theory recognizes that complex challenges require teams with complementary skills and perspectives. The three Buddhas working together represent the perfect team for addressing the complexity of suffering and the path to liberation. Research on therapeutic teams and support systems shows that the most effective help comes when different types of expertise and care are coordinated rather than working in isolation. In your own life, this contemplation reminds you that you don't have to develop every capacity perfectly on your own. Sometimes you need to access wisdom, sometimes compassion, and sometimes the integrating power that unites them. By visualizing these perfect expressions of human potential, you learn to recognize and call upon these resources both within yourself and in your relationships with others. The 10th through 12th contemplations teach increasingly detailed visualization of the Pure Land environment, including its perfect climate, abundant food, beautiful music, and ideal social conditions where all beings live in harmony. These contemplations literally describe a world where every aspect of the environment supports happiness and spiritual development. The weather is always perfect, food appears effortlessly whenever desired, and beautiful music constantly plays, inspiring joy and devotion. These ideal conditions represent what becomes possible when the environment is organized around spiritual values rather than competition and accumulation. They show us what human society could look like if cooperation and mutual support were the organizing principles. Utopian thinkers throughout history have envisioned similar ideal societies. From Plato's Republic to modern intentional communities, humans have consistently imagined social arrangements that would support the flourishing of all members. Environmental psychology shows how physical and social environments profoundly shape behavior and well-being. The ideal conditions described in these contemplations represent the optimal environment for human psychological and spiritual development. Research on positive psychology and well-being identifies specific environmental factors that promote human flourishing, including beauty, social connection, meaningful activity, and freedom from basic anxiety about survival needs. While you may not be able to create perfect external conditions immediately, these contemplations help you recognize what truly supports well-being and guides you toward making choices that move your environment in more positive directions. They also help you appreciate whatever elements of beauty and harmony already exist in your current situation. The 13th through 15th contemplations focus on the different grades of beings born in the Pure Land, showing how the Pure Land accommodates beings with different levels of spiritual development, while ensuring that all eventually achieve complete enlightenment. Literally, these contemplations describe how beings of different spiritual capacities are born into appropriate conditions within the Pure Land, some immediately enjoying advanced spiritual abilities, while others begin with more basic conditions, but all receiving perfect support for their development. This teaching addresses the concern that spiritual paths might be exclusive, or that some people are inherently more capable of spiritual achievement than others. The graded system shows how perfect conditions can accommodate any level of development. Educational psychology recognizes the importance of meeting learners where they are, rather than expecting everyone to start at the same level. Differentiated instruction provides appropriate challenges and support for each individual's current capacity. Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences suggests that people have different types of spiritual and intellectual gifts that need to be recognized and supported rather than ignored or suppressed. Inclusive design principles in architecture and social systems work to create environments that can accommodate people with different abilities and needs while enabling everyone to participate fully in community life. These contemplations remind you that your current level of spiritual development is exactly right for where you are now. You don't need to compare yourself with others or feel inadequate because you're not as advanced as you think you should be. Perfect conditions exist to support your growth from wherever you're starting, and your ultimate spiritual potential is the same as everyone else's. The 16th and final contemplation brings together all the previous contemplations into one complete vision, showing Queen Vaidehi how to see the entire Pure Land, with all its beauty and inhabitants in perfect detail. This final contemplation represents the achievement of complete visualization skill, the ability to hold the entire Pure Land clearly in consciousness as a stable refuge that can be accessed whenever needed. This represents mastery of the contemplative path taught in the sutra. The integration of all previous contemplations into one complete vision represents the achievement of mental stability and clarity that can maintain complex, beautiful imagery while remaining peaceful and undisturbed. Gestalt psychology emphasizes how humans naturally seek to organize perceptions into meaningful wholes. The final contemplation represents the achievement of perfect perceptual organization around the most beautiful and meaningful possible focus. Flow state research shows how skilled practitioners can maintain complex, demanding activities while experiencing states of effortless concentration and deep satisfaction. The complete Pure Land visualization represents this kind of optimal experience applied to spiritual practice. Mindfulness research demonstrates that training attention through meditation practices creates lasting changes in brain structure and function that support greater emotional stability and cognitive flexibility. The complete Pure Land contemplation offers you a comprehensive practice for training your mind to focus on beauty, harmony, and spiritual aspiration rather than being caught up in whatever problems or distractions might be dominating your attention. With practice, this ability to shift into contemplation of perfect beauty becomes a reliable refuge that you can access whenever you need inner peace and inspiration. After teaching these 16 contemplations, Buddha addressed an important question that Queen Vaidehi would naturally have. What about people who cannot master these complex visualization practices? His answer introduced the path of Nenbutsu, simply calling the name of Amitabha Buddha with sincere faith as an equally valid path to birth in the Pure Land. This teaching literally promises that even those who cannot master meditation techniques can achieve the same spiritual destination through simple, sincere practice of calling upon Amitabha's name. This democratizes access to the Pure Land, making it available to everyone regardless of their contemplative abilities. The Nenbutsu practice represents the principle that sincerity of heart is more important than technical skill in spiritual practice. A simple practice performed with genuine faith and devotion can be more effective than complex practices performed with pride or ambition. Martin Luther's emphasis on faith alone rather than works as the path to salvation reflects similar understanding. He recognized that divine grace responds to sincere faith rather than to human achievement or merit. Carl Rogers. Research on therapeutic conditions showed that genuineness, empathy, and unconditional positive regard were more important than specific therapeutic techniques in promoting healing and growth. Research on the therapeutic benefits of repetitive prayer and mantra practice shows that simple, repeated practices can induce deep states of relaxation, reduce anxiety, and promote feelings of connection and well-being. If you find meditation or visualization difficult, this teaching offers tremendous relief. Your spiritual development doesn't depend on mastering complex techniques. Simple, sincere practices like repetitive prayer, mantra, or even just regularly remembering to be grateful can be just as effective as elaborate meditation practices. What matters is the sincerity of your intention and the regularity of your practice, not its complexity. Buddha concluded his teaching to Queen Vaidehi by describing the immediate benefits she would receive from these practices. He promised that through regular contemplation of the Pure Land, she would experience peace and joy that transcended her external circumstances, and that at the time of death she would see Amitabha Buddha coming to guide her safely to the Pure Land. The literal promise addresses both immediate and ultimate concerns. In the short term, contemplative practice would provide Queen Vaidehi with mental peace and emotional stability that would help her cope with her difficult situation. Ultimately, it would ensure her safe passage to perfect happiness after death. These promises can be understood psychologically as describing the natural results of training the mind to focus on beauty, harmony, and spiritual ideals, rather than being caught up in immediate problems and anxieties. Viktor Frankl's research with Holocaust survivors showed that people who maintained meaningful spiritual practices were better able to endure extreme suffering while preserving their mental health and sense of purpose. Positive psychology research has documented how contemplative practices focusing on beauty, gratitude, and transcendent meaning significantly improve both mental health and life satisfaction. Studies of people facing terminal illness show that those who maintain spiritual practices experience less anxiety about death and more peace in their final days. These teachings offer you both immediate and long-term hope. Right now, regular contemplative practice can help you maintain inner peace and joy even when external circumstances are challenging. Looking toward the future, this same practice prepares you to face life's ultimate transition with confidence and peace, knowing that you're supported by infinite compassion and wisdom. The Contemplation Sutra concludes with Queen Vaidehi's transformation. Through practicing these contemplations, she achieved profound inner peace and clear vision of the Pure Land. More importantly, she realized that this peace and beauty were not separate from her own mind, but were expressions of consciousness itself, when freed from the limitations of fear and attachment. This conclusion shows us that the goal of contemplative practice is not escape from our current life, but transformation of our understanding and experience of it. When we learn to see with the eyes of wisdom and compassion, even ordinary circumstances reveal their inherent beauty and spiritual significance. Queen Vaidehi's story represents the journey that's available to each of us. We begin in circumstances that seem limiting or painful, but through contemplative practice, we discover inner resources of peace and joy that transform our entire experience of life. As we come to the end of our exploration today, let's reflect on what the Contemplation Sutra offers us as modern people facing contemporary challenges. Like Queen Vaidehi, we often find ourselves in situations that feel overwhelming or beyond our control. We may feel trapped by circumstances, betrayed by people we trusted, or simply overwhelmed by the pace and complexity of modern life. This ancient text reminds us that no external circumstances can ultimately imprison the human spirit. Through the power of contemplation, we can create inner sanctuaries of peace and beauty that remain accessible regardless of what's happening around us. We don't have to wait for perfect external conditions to experience profound peace and joy. The 16 contemplations provide a complete training program for the mind, teaching us to focus on beauty, harmony, and spiritual ideals rather than being constantly caught up in problems and anxieties. This isn't about denial or escape from reality, but about recognizing that consciousness itself has the capacity to create experiences of profound beauty and meaning. Perhaps most importantly, this sutra reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles. Just as Buddha appeared to Queen Vaidehi in her moment of greatest need, sources of wisdom and compassion are always available to us when we call upon them with sincere hearts. Whether we understand this literally or metaphorically, the practical truth remains the same. Genuine calls for help are always answered, though not always in the ways we expect. The path of contemplation offers both immediate and ultimate benefits. Right now, it can help you maintain inner peace and clarity even in difficult circumstances. Over time, it develops inner resources of wisdom and compassion that make you increasingly able to help both yourself and others. Ultimately, it prepares you to face life's greatest challenges, including death itself, with confidence and peace. As you go forward from today, I encourage you to experiment with contemplative practices that appeal to you. You might try visualizing beautiful natural scenes, perfect architectural spaces, or idealized spiritual figures. You might practice simple, repetitive prayers or mantras. You might simply spend time each day focusing on whatever beauty is already present in your current environment. What matters is not the specific technique, but the regular practice of training your mind to focus on what's beautiful, meaningful, and spiritually nourishing, rather than being constantly caught up in whatever problems or anxieties might be dominating your attention. This simple shift in mental focus can transform your entire experience of life. Remember that you don't have to master complex meditation techniques to benefit from contemplative practice. Simple, sincere practices performed regularly can be just as effective as elaborate systems. Your willingness to seek peace and beauty, your sincere intention to grow spiritually, is already enough to open doors to profound transformation. The Pure Land that Queen Vaidehi learned to contemplate exists not only as a future destination, but as a present possibility within consciousness itself. Every time you choose to focus on beauty rather than ugliness, peace rather than conflict, love rather than fear, you're creating and entering your own pure land. May the wisdom we've shared today become a source of lasting peace and inspiration in your daily life. May you discover the power of contemplation to transform any circumstances into opportunities for spiritual growth and inner beauty. May you always remember that no matter how difficult your external situation might be, you carry within yourself the capacity to create inner sanctuaries of perfect peace and joy. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of one of Buddhism's most beautiful and practical teachings. The fact that these contemplations continue to bring peace and transformation to people across centuries reminds us that the human capacity for transcendence and inner beauty is timeless and universal. May these truths illuminate your path and bring you the peace and joy that are your birthright.